They laughed in court. I'll strip that fool to the bone, and then we'll fly to the Maldives on her money. Everyone was stunned by how I put them in their place, even the judge. The briefcase lay on the armchair in the hallway, slightly open. Esperanza was walking by when she noticed the corner of a document peeking out from a leather folder. Normally, she never touched Maximiliano's things, but something made her stop. Maybe intuition. Maybe chance. She pulled out the papers and skimmed through the text. A deed of gift. Their country house. The recipient, Remedios Cruz, her mother-in-law. Esperanza didn't gasp, didn't drop the papers, didn't run to confront her husband. She just stood in the hallway, holding the document in her hands, and her mind worked coldly, precisely. 36 years of life had taught her not to panic before it was time. Her legal training told her, first information, then action. She took out her phone and photographed every page, checking the quality of each image twice. Then she carefully put the document back into the folder, closed the briefcase, and set it exactly where it had been. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing stayed steady. Inside, there were no tears, no hysteria, only icy focus. The country house had been built 3 years earlier, with her money. After divorcing her first husband, she had sold her 2-room apartment for $60,000. All that money had gone into construction. Maximiliano had said then that he would contribute his share later, once some business funds were freed up. The money never appeared, but Esperanza didn't press him. She thought it didn't matter. They were a family, after all. What difference did it make whose money it was, if they lived together? Now, apparently, it did matter. That evening Maximiliano came home from work around 8:30, tired but cheerful. He kissed her on the cheek automatically and asked about dinner. Esperanza served him roasted chicken with vegetables, then sat across from him with a cup of tea, watching as he ate and checked his phone between bites. "Max, are you planning to do something with the property?" He flinched, just a little, but she noticed. His eyes froze for a second, then he composed himself and shrugged. "No, why?" His voice sounded natural, too natural for someone caught off guard. "A colleague at work was talking about deeds of gift," Esperanza said casually. "She says they're more practical than wills." Maximiliano nodded, pretending the subject had nothing to do with him. "Maybe. I wouldn't know much about that." He was lying. She could tell from the tension around his eyes, from how intently he focused on his plate. He lied easily, effortlessly, to the woman who had shared his life for 14 years, which meant it wasn't the first time. There was a whole history of deceit behind that calm face. "I see," she said, sipping her tea. They didn't speak again that evening. Maximiliano went to his office. She stayed in the kitchen, her mind assembling the chain of logic. A deed of gift didn't appear out of nowhere. Lawyers drafted it, notaries certified it. It took time and money. He was serious about this scheme. The only question was, why? The answer was obvious: divorce and division of property. If the house was legally in his mother's name, Esperanza would get nothing in a divorce. Her $60,000 would simply vanish. Cold, calculated, cruel. The next morning, after Maximiliano left for work and the children went to school, Esperanza took her passport and drove to the property registry. The line took half an hour, but she waited patiently. She requested official extracts for all their real estate: the country house, the 3-bedroom apartment in the city center, and the garage with the parking space in their building. The clerk said the documents would be ready in 5 business days. Esperanza thanked her and stepped outside. The day was bright and sunny. People around her smiled, hurried to their errands, while inside her a cold knot of foreboding tightened. The worst was yet to come. Work helped her not to think. Esperanza worked as a lawyer for a large retail company, handling supplier and lease contracts. Routine, numbers, clauses, all of it distracted her from the thought of her husband and that document. But in the evenings, when the children did homework and Maximiliano sat in his office, she replayed the situation over and over in her mind. 5 days later, she received the extracts. Sitting in her car in the registry's parking lot, she opened the first envelope. The house, all clear, joint ownership between her and her husband. The apartment, the same. But the garage. Esperanza read the lines 3 times. The garage and parking space had been transferred to Remedio's cruise 2 months ago. The basis, a deed of gift. Donor, Esperanza Moreno. She had never in her life signed any such document. Her hands clenched on the steering wheel, not from fear or panic, but from cold, measured fury. Her signature had been forged. Legally, that meant fraud, a criminal offense, committed by the people closest to her, her husband and his mother. Esperanza started the car and drove home. On the way, she stopped at the post office and sent a request for a handwriting examination. The expert worked quickly. For an extra fee, he promised results within a week. She paid without hesitation. At home, Esperanza took an old voice recorder from the top shelf, one she had bought years ago to record lectures at university. It had been gathering dust ever since. Now it would be useful. She checked the batteries, the recording quality, the microphone sensitivity. Everything worked perfectly. She hid the recorder behind some books on the living room shelf. She chose that spot carefully. Maximiliano liked to talk on the phone there, pacing between the sofa and the window. Esperanza pressed record and went to prepare dinner. She didn't have to wait long. That evening her husband settled in the living room with a glass of whiskey and his phone. Esperanza pretended to be busy in the kitchen, but she listened to every word. "Mom, everything's going according to plan. The deed for the house is almost ready. I just need to find the right notary. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Cooks, takes the kids to school, the perfect obedient wife. Listen, this is already the third document I've forged for her. The first two went through fine. Of course I'm being careful. The main thing is that she doesn't catch on before the divorce. After that, it'll be too late for her to prove anything." Esperanza stood by the stove, stirring the sauce slowly. The third document. So there was more, something besides the garage. What could it be? A bank account? Company shares? A deposit? "Come on, Mom, she's stupid," he laughed. "In 14 years she's never checked a single paper, never looked into the finances. A convenient wife, that's all. Had the kids, cooks, cleans, her job's done." Maximiliano's voice sounded cheerful, carefree. He spoke of their life together as if describing a bad household appliance, without emotion, without regret. Just a fact, used up, bored, time to throw away. Esperanza turned off the stove and went to the bedroom, lying on the bed and staring at the ceiling. Inside, nothing changed, no tears, no despair. Only one clear thought: war had been declared, and she had no intention of losing. The next day, after work, Esperanza went to Immaculata's office. They had met 5 years earlier at a corporate law seminar and occasionally crossed paths at professional events. Immaculata ran a private practice specializing in family disputes. She was around 50, strict and composed, with short hair, a tailored suit, and no jewelry except a watch. Esperanza spread the registry extracts, photos of the deed from her husband's briefcase, and the voice recording on the desk. Immaculata examined everything carefully, jotting down notes in her notebook. When she finished listening to the audio, she shook her head. "This is outright fraud. A criminal offense. Your husband and his mother could face real prison time." "I know," said Esperanza. "And you're ready to go all the way?" "Absolutely." Immaculata tapped her pen thoughtfully against the desk. "Just don't rush. If you go to the police right now, they might deny everything. They'll say they were only planning it, that you misunderstood the conversation. We need to catch them red-handed," said Immaculata, "when the crime is already complete, with no way to back out." "So you mean I should let them rob me?" "Let them think they've robbed you. In reality, you'll be one step ahead." Esperanza nodded. The logic was flawless. In law, only evidence matters, solid, irrefutable proof. Let her husband and mother-in-law go all the way. Let them think they've won. Then she would strike, so hard they wouldn't even see it coming. "How much time do we have?" "Judging by the document you found, they plan to finalize everything within the next 2 or 3 months. Stay alert. Play the role of the naive wife who suspects nothing." "I've been playing that role for 14 years already," Esperanza said dryly. Immaculata smirked. "This time you'll play it consciously, and you'll get everything that's rightfully yours." When Esperanza got home, she made dinner as usual. She greeted Maximiliano with a smile, asked about his day, set the table. He ate, talking about some new project at work. She nodded, smiled, asked questions. The perfect wife. But inside, a plan was already forming, cold, precise, merciless. A few days later, Remedios arrived. Normally, her mother-in-law visited once a month at most. The woman had never shown much warmth toward her daughter-in-law. Her tone was always dry, her gaze appraising the cleanliness of the house, the children, the food. Esperanza was used to that chill and paid it no mind. But this time, things were different. Remedios entered the house with a wide smile, hugged Esperanza, and called her Mejia. She brought a large homemade pie and a box of chocolates. Sat in the kitchen, asked about her health, her job, the kids. Soledad and Joaquin were puzzled. Their grandmother was usually curt, distant, and now she showered them with compliments, stroked their hair, asked about school. The children exchanged confused glances but answered politely. When they left for their rooms, Remedios poured herself tea and got to the point. Esperanza, I've been thinking. You know, I'm 63 already. My health isn't what it used to be. My heart gives me trouble. I want to help you while I still can. Help us? Esperanza asked, feigning interest. Yes. You have that apartment downtown, a good one, big. But the property taxes? They keep going up. And if, God forbid, something happens to Maximiliano's business, creditors might go after the property. The business seems fine so far. Now it's fine, sure, but who knows what'll happen tomorrow. The economy's unstable. Here's what I propose. Let's transfer the apartment to my name. Just temporarily, purely for legal protection. Later, well, someday, it will all go to the children anyway. This way, it'll be safer and easier with taxes. Esperanza put on a thoughtful expression. Inside, she almost laughed at the audacity of the scheme. The woman sounded so sincere, so caring, as if she truly had the family's best interests at heart. A good actress, she had to admit. But why complicate things like that? It's not complicated at all, Mejia. It's for your own good. Esperanza paused, pretending to weigh the idea. I'll have to think about it. For a split second, Remedios' face hardened, but she quickly regained control and smiled again. Of course, dear, think it over. But don't take too long. You never know what might happen. When Remedios left, Esperanza walked into the living room. Maximiliano was on the sofa with his laptop. He looked up. So, did Mom talk to you? She did. About the apartment. And what do you think? Esperanza shrugged. I don't know. It sounds strange. Maximiliano frowned. Annoyance flickered in his eyes, but he quickly hid it behind a mask of indifference. Fine. It's up to you. They didn't discuss it again that night, but Esperanza could tell her husband was tense, irritated by her hesitation, which meant the plan with his mother was serious, which meant they were in a hurry. A week passed. Maximiliano grew colder. He came home late, disappeared on weekends for work. Esperanza didn't ask questions or complain. She kept playing her role. And then it happened, exactly what she'd been waiting for. That evening, after the kids went to bed, Maximiliano came into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Esperanza was reading. She looked up at him. Esp, we need to talk. I'm listening. He hesitated, searching for words. His face looked serious, almost sad. You know, I've been thinking we've kind of grown distant. Haven't you noticed? Esperanza closed her book. What do you mean? Well, we live side by side, but each in our own world. You're busy with the kids and your job. I've got my work. I don't feel the closeness we used to have. So what are you suggesting? Maximiliano sighed, putting on a mask of regret. Maybe it's time to separate, before we become complete strangers. Esperanza stayed silent. Inside, she felt triumph. There it is. It's begun. But her face showed only confusion, even fear. How can that be? What about the kids? They'll understand. Soledad's 14, Joaquin's 10. They're not little anymore. We're civilized people. We'll split everything fairly, without drama. The word fairly cut through her like a blade. Esperanza tightened her grip on the book, but her voice stayed calm. Is this your final decision? I think so. It'll be better for both of us. All right, let's think about it. Maximiliano nodded and left the room. Esperanza remained sitting, staring into nothing. So that's how it's done, calmly, without shouting, almost amicably. You announce a divorce, divide the assets you've already stolen in advance. Elegant, cynical, disgusting. She stood and went to the window. Outside, the sky was dark, the streetlights glowing in the courtyard. Out there, ordinary people lived ordinary lives. But here, a real war was unfolding, silent, invisible, ruthless. Esperanza took her phone and texted Immaculata. He's filed for divorce. We begin. The reply came a minute later. Perfect. Prepare the documents. They're about to bury themselves. The next morning, Esperanza went to the bank. She checked all accounts in her name. 2 out of 3 were empty, and one had held nearly $7,500, her annual bonus. The money had disappeared 3 weeks earlier, transferred to the account of Remedios Cruz. Esperanza requested a statement and saved it to her phone. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in their coffin. That evening, she acted as if nothing had happened. Made dinner. Maximiliano came home, ate in silence, went to his office. The children did their homework. Esperanza helped Joaquin with math. An ordinary evening for an ordinary family. Only inside her, everything was boiling. 2 days later, the handwriting expert's report arrived. The signature on the deed for the garage was not Esperanza's. The expert had noted multiple inconsistencies, letter slant, pressure, distinctive elements. The conclusion was unequivocal: forgery. Esperanza placed the report into a folder with the rest of her documents. Her arsenal was growing. Soon, she'd be ready to strike. Life went on as usual. Maximiliano grew even colder, barely speaking to her. The children sensed the tension. Soledad asked a few times if everything was okay. Esperanza reassured her, saying that adults sometimes go through difficult phases but things would work out. Only she knew nothing would. This was just the beginning. One evening, while Maximiliano was again in the living room on the phone, the recorder captured another conversation. Mom, she agreed to the divorce. No drama, no shouting. Quiet, just accepted it. Yeah, perfect. Now the main thing is to transfer the apartment while she's still dazed. The lawyer says we have to do it before filing the court petition. No, she's dumb, she won't suspect anything. I'm telling you, 14 years together, and she's never checked a single document. A housewife, that's all. Esperanza listened to the recording the next morning, after he'd left for work. A housewife. Dumb. Convenient. Each word hit its mark, but didn't hurt. It only fueled her anger. Cold, crystalline anger. She copied the recording onto a flash drive and brought it to Immaculata. The lawyer listened and nodded. They're digging their own graves. Now we just wait for the final step. When do you think they'll make it? Soon. The divorce is already on the table. They're rushing. Probably within a couple of weeks they'll ask you to sign some papers. That's when we strike. Esperanza went back home. In the mailbox she found an envelope from a law firm. Inside was a notice. Maximiliano had filed for divorce. She was summoned to a preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. So there wasn't much time left. They would press, rush, try to get everything transferred before the court date. Esperanza was ready. She opened her laptop, started a new document, and began to write, thoroughly, structurally, with references to specific statutes. She described every episode of fraud, every forgery, every transfer of funds. She attached copies of documents and links to the recordings. It was her counterattack, carefully planned, legally airtight, merciless. By midnight the document was finished. Esperanza read it twice, checked every comma, saved it to a flash drive, and sent a copy to Immaculata. The lawyer replied an hour later. Magnificent. They have no idea who they're dealing with. Esperanza closed the laptop and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, a sense of calm settled inside her. Not relief, not joy, just a cold certainty that everything was going according to plan. In the morning, over breakfast, Maximiliano said, Mom wants to meet with you to talk about the division of property. She suggests we settle everything peacefully, without going to court. Esperanza was spreading butter on her bread without looking up. All right. When? This evening. She'll come to our place. Agreed. Maximiliano finished his coffee and left. Esperanza stayed in the kitchen, finishing her sandwich. So, today, they would make their move, and she would answer. The chess game was entering its end game. At exactly 7, Remedios arrived. She wore an elegant burgundy dress, a neat hairstyle, discreet makeup. She looked solid, trustworthy. The three of them sat in the kitchen. Her mother-in-law laid out some papers on the table and began to explain. Esperanza, Maxito told me everything. You've decided to divorce. It's sad, of course, but it happens. The important thing now is to divide everything like civilized people. I've prepared a draft agreement. Look, the apartment stays with you and the children, the country house goes to Maximiliano, and the garage, to me. Esperanza listened and nodded. Inside, she was laughing at the absurdity. The garage had already been illegally put in her mother-in-law's name, the house was next to be transferred to her as well, and the apartment was the only thing they were magnanimously leaving to Esperanza, though they would probably try to snatch that later, too. And why the garage for you? Esperanza asked innocently. Remedios didn't flinch. Well, it's already registered to me. You signed the gift deed 2 months ago, remember? I signed it. Of course. Here, look, the copy. She handed over the sheet. Esperanza's signature sat there, fake, crudely done, but passable at a glance. Esperanza studied the document, then looked up at her mother-in-law. I see. Good, then sign the agreement and we'll part peacefully. Remedios held out a pen. Esperanza took it, twirled it between her fingers. Maximiliano sat across from her, watching, tense anticipation in his eyes. You know what? Esperanza said slowly. I've prepared something too. She took her own folder out of her bag, set it on the table, opened it, and pulled out the first document. Here is the handwriting expert's report. The signature on the garage gift deed is not mine. It's a forgery. Remedios went pale. Maximiliano froze. What are you talking about? He snapped. The truth. Here's a bank statement. $7,500 were transferred from my account to your mother's without my knowledge. And here's a recording of your conversation with her where you two discuss how you're going to deceive me. Esperanza turned on the recorder. A voice filled the kitchen. Mom, she hasn't noticed a thing. I've already forged a third document in her name. Her mother-in-law leapt up, trying to snatch the recorder. Esperanza pulled it away. Don't touch it. These are evidentiary materials already handed over to my lawyer and to law enforcement. Maximiliano blanched. What have you done? Calmly, Esperanza gathered the documents back into her folder. I protected my rights. What you were planning is fraud, a criminal offense. Forgery, unlawful appropriation of property, theft of funds from a bank account. People go to prison for that. Remedios clutched her heart and groaned. A typical performance. Esperanza didn't buy it. Stop putting on a show. I have a note from your cardiologist. Your heart is fine. How did you get that? Maximiliano breathed. Through official channels. I'm a lawyer. I know how it's done. Silence fell. Maximiliano and his mother exchanged glances, bewilderment, fear, anger in their eyes. Let's be reasonable, her husband said in a different tone. Yes, we had thoughts. But we haven't done anything wrong. We can return the garage and the money. Let's forget about this. Too late. The police report has already been filed. The expert analyses are complete. A case has been opened. You bitch, hissed Remedios, all her fake kindness gone. Ungrateful wretch. We pulled you out of the gutter, gave you everything, and you gave me lies and betrayal. Now you'll get what you deserve. Esperanza stood and picked up her bag. You can go. From now on, communicate through the lawyers. Maximiliano tried to block her way. You'll regret this. I'll destroy you. Leave you with nothing. Esperanza looked at him coldly. You have nothing to destroy me with. The house was built with my money. I can prove it. The apartment is jointly owned. The garage was illegally transferred. The transaction will be annulled, and you and your mother will face criminal charges. so there will be no one left to do the destroying. She left the kitchen and went up to her room. She locked the door, sat on the bed, and folded her hands on her knees. Inside, everything trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the strain of the past weeks, from the realization that the first blow had been struck. Voices rose downstairs, Maximiliano and his mother arguing furiously. Then the front door slammed. Her mother-in-law had left. Esperanza took out her phone and texted Immaculata. "Round 1 to me." They're in shock. The reply came instantly. "Excellent. Brace for round 2. It's going to get hot." Esperanza lay back and closed her eyes. Yes, it would get hot, but she wasn't going to stop. She'd gone too far, learned too much, gotten too angry. Ahead lay court, proceedings, maybe scandals. But she had crossed the Rubicon and would see it through, whatever it took. She couldn't sleep that night. Esperanza sat by the window, looking out at the dark courtyard and the lights in the neighboring buildings. She thought about how quickly what had seemed unshakable could collapse. 14 years of marriage, 2 children, a shared home, all of it turned out to be a facade, a pretty wrapper hiding cold calculation and betrayal. Maximiliano didn't try to come in. He spent the entire night in his study. She could hear him talking on the phone, probably consulting lawyers, trying to find a way out. But there wasn't one. Esperanza had calculated everything, anticipated everything. In the morning, her husband left without even saying goodbye. Esperanza got the kids ready for school as usual. Soledad watched her anxiously. "Mom, are you and Dad okay?" "Not exactly, sweetheart, but don't worry, adults will sort it out." "Are you getting divorced?" Esperanza didn't lie. "Yes, but that doesn't mean we've stopped loving you and Joaquin. We just can't live together anymore." Soledad nodded, eyes filling with tears. Esperanza hugged her and stroked her hair. "Everything will be all right, I promise." When the children left for school, Esperanza sat down at her laptop and opened her email. A message from the investigator. A criminal case had been opened for fraud and document forgery. She was required to appear to give a formal statement. She booked the earliest slot. 2 days later she would go to the station and lay out the whole story, with evidence, witnesses, and expert reports. Maximiliano would get a summons, too, and Remedios. She wondered how they would react, deny everything or immediately start looking for attorneys. Esperanza poured herself some coffee and sat by the window. It was going to be a long day. Work awaited her, then picking the kids up from school, then making dinner. The usual routine. Only nothing inside her was usual anymore. She had crossed the Rubicon, and there was no way back, only forward, toward the denouement, toward justice, toward the moment when Maximiliano and his mother would understand. She was not to be trifled with. Esperanza took a sip of coffee and smiled, coldly, without joy. Simply because she knew she would win this war. She absolutely would. The next morning, Esperanza spent her time nailing down the details. She called Immaculata. "I need your help setting a trap. They'll try to transfer the apartment soon. I've already thought about that. I know a notary, Milagros. Honest, principled. If we explain the situation, she'll help. When your husband sets an appointment to sign the papers, you show up, and we stage the exposure right there in the office. How do we get the police involved? A notary is required to report attempted fraud. Milagros will call them herself as soon as she sees the forged documents and hears your conversation. The key is to gather all the evidence beforehand and file a report a few days before the meeting. Then the police will already be in the loop." Esperanza wrote everything down in a notebook. The plan was clear and feasible. She nodded. The logic was airtight. Let the criminals carry their scheme to completion, then bring the full weight of the law down on them. How much time do we have? Judging by the documents, they're rushing. 2 weeks, 3 at most. Stay alert. Leaving the manor, Esperanza felt a strange calm. The plan was set, the strategy laid out. All that remained was to hold steady and see it through. At home, Maximiliano was waiting, sitting in the living room watching a movie. When he saw his wife, he turned off the TV. "Where were you?" "At a friend's. We were discussing the situation." He narrowed his eyes. "What situation?" "The divorce. I needed some moral support." Maximiliano relaxed. Apparently he decided his wife was looking for comfort from friends, not preparing a counterattack. Esp, let's talk calmly. I know this is hard for you right now, but we're adults, we can resolve everything civilly, without drama. Esperanza sat on the sofa opposite him, folded her hands on her knees, and arranged a mask of weariness and submission on her face. All right, Maximiliano, let's separate peacefully. Just, let's not put the kids through extra trauma. Her husband visibly brightened. Of course, of course. The kids are my top priority. We'll discuss everything, divide the property fairly, and part as friends. The word fairly grated, but Esperanza kept her expression neutral. Fine. That evening, when she was already in bed, there was a soft knock at the door. Soledad came in and sat on the edge of the bed. Mom, are you really okay with the divorce? Yes, honey. But why? You've been together so long. Esperanza stroked her daughter's hair. Sometimes people change. Your dad has changed. It'll be better for us to live apart. Soledad was quiet for a moment, then pressed herself against her mother. I'm scared. Don't be. I'm in control of everything. It's going to be all right. The girl went back to her room, and Esperanza lay there staring into the dark. In control. Yes, for now she was in control. But she couldn't relax. The hardest part was ahead. The next day after work, Esperanza stopped by a big shopping center. She bought a new voice recorder, more powerful than the previous one. Pickup radius, 15 meters. She could place it in the hallway and capture conversations from every room. At home, she set the device on the top shelf of the built-in closet, camouflaged it with boxes of old papers, switched it on, and went to make dinner. Maximiliano came home late and locked himself in his study. Half an hour later she heard him on the phone. His voice was lively, cheerful. Mom, she took the bait, didn't even make a scene. Says we'll part peacefully. I knew she wouldn't dare resist. Yeah, now the main thing is to transfer the apartment. The lawyer said we have to do it before she files suit. No, she's stupid, she won't suspect anything. We've been married 14 years and she's never once gone through the documents. Of course it'll work. We'll finalize everything in a week and she'll be left high and dry. Esperanza washed the dishes, listening to the monologue. Each word etched itself into her memory. Stupid. Won't dare. High and dry. That's how her husband spoke about her behind her back. The man whose 2 children she had borne, the man she had shared a bed with for 14 years. She dried her hands on a towel, poured herself some water, and drained the glass. Inside, there were no tears and no hurt, only an icy resolve to see this through to the end. In the morning, a message arrived from an unknown number. Esperanza, this is Penelope, your husband's ex-wife. We need to meet. Esperanza? It's Penelope. Penelope Valdez. Esperanza tensed. The last name meant nothing to her. I'm listening. I'm Maximiliano's ex-wife. I need to meet with you. It's important. The next day they met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Penelope turned out to be a tall, thin woman with short hair. She was around 38, but looked older than her years, smart, guarded eyes. They ordered coffee and sat by the window. Penelope was silent for a long time, then began. I found out Maximiliano remarried and that you're divorcing. I decided to warn you. He and his mother have done this before. He pulled the exact same scheme with me. Esperanza listened closely. Tell me more. Penelope sighed. When we divorced 6 years ago, I was left with nothing. The apartment, the car, the cottage. Maximiliano had transferred everything to his mother a month before the divorce. I tried to fight it, but I couldn't prove the fraud. They had bogus receipts, fake acknowledgments. Remedios swore she'd bought everything with her own money. So it's their standard play. Yes. Later I found out there was another woman before me. They cheated her the same way. Why did you keep quiet? You could have warned me sooner. I didn't know you existed. Maximiliano keeps his personal life well hidden. I only recently happened to see you together and tracked you down through social media. Esperanza nodded and took out her phone, opening the folder of documents. I have evidence of their scheme, forged signatures, recorded conversations, expert reports. I'm getting ready to push back. Penelope's eyes lit up. Seriously? You can make them pay for it? I'm going to try. Then I'll testify. I'll tell everything that happened 6 years ago, let them finally answer for what they've done. They talked for another hour, going over the details of Penelope's divorce, the same manipulations, the same tricks. The scheme was honed to perfection. As they parted, they exchanged numbers. Penelope promised to gather all the documents from her case and pass them to Esperanza. On the drive home, Esperanza turned it all over in her mind. The picture grew darker. This wasn't just a family quarrel, it was a bona fide criminal scheme with multiple victims. A few days later, Immaculata texted, Esperanza, important news, I checked Remedios through my channels. She had a case opened 7 years ago, inheritance fraud. It was closed for lack of evidence, but the fact remains. So she's been caught before. Exactly. It strengthens our position in court, it shows a pattern of criminal behavior. That same evening, she called Maximiliano. Maximiliano, I've been thinking about your mother's idea regarding the apartment. Maybe she's right. Let's put it in her name. Her husband clearly hadn't expected such a quick capitulation. Maximiliano, I've been thinking about your mother's proposal, about the apartment. Maybe she's right? Let's put it in her name so we won't have to divide it in the divorce. He could barely contain the glee in his voice. Seriously? You're willing to put the apartment in Mom's name? I am. If you think it's best, have her set up an appointment with a notary. Perfect. I'll call her now. We'll arrange it for the next few days. Esperanza nodded and stepped out into the hallway. She took out her phone and texted Immaculata, they've taken the bait. They'll set a notary appointment soon. The reply was instant, excellent. I've already coordinated with Milagros. As soon as you know the date and time, tell me, we'll take them down there. 2 days later, Maximiliano announced, my mother arranged an appointment with the notary for the day after tomorrow at 2 p.m. Can you make it? I can. Then we'll meet there. I'll send you the address. Esperanza forwarded the information to Immaculata right away. The attorney confirmed, it was Milagros's office, everything was going according to plan. The night before the meeting, Esperanza barely slept. Tomorrow everything would be decided. Either the plan would work, or she'd have to look for other ways. But she wasn't going to back down. In the morning she put on a strict gray business suit and pinned her hair into a bun. No makeup, just face cream. She looked serious, composed. The notary's office was in a modern business center. Esperanza went up to the 4th floor and entered the office marked Milagros Corrales. The notary was a stout woman of about 57, with gray hair and a stern look. She greeted Esperanza with a nod and closed the door. Immaculata explained everything. I'll help you, but bear in mind, if they try to carry out an illegal transaction in my presence, I'm obliged to notify the police. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Milagros nodded. Then let's proceed. Invite them in. Esperanza texted, I'm at the office. Come over. 20 minutes later her husband and mother-in-law arrived. Remedios was beaming. Maximiliano looked pleased. They entered the office and greeted the notary. So, we're formalizing a deed of gift for the apartment, Milagros began briskly. Donor, Esperanza Moreno. Recipient, Remedios Cruz, correct? Correct, the mother-in-law nodded. The notary took out a contract form and began filling it in. Esperanza sat silently, watching her husband's and mother-in-law's reactions. They exchanged glances, barely containing their glee. Milagros finished and set the contract on the desk. Esperanza, you need to sign here, here, and here. Esperanza picked up the pen, brought it to the first line, and paused. Show me the document for the garage that I supposedly gifted to Remedios 2 months ago. Silence. Remedios paled. Maximiliano sprang to his feet. What garage? What are you talking about? Esperanza set down the pen, pulled a folder from her bag, and took out a copy of the garage gift deed. This one, with my signature, only the signature is forged. Her mother-in-law tried to regain her composure. Esperanza, you're confused. I'm not. Esperanza produced the next document. Here's the handwriting expert's report. The signature on the contract isn't mine. It's a forgery. Maximiliano lunged toward the desk, trying to snatch the papers. Esperanza moved aside and handed the documents to the notary. Milagros, please review them. The notary examined the expert report carefully. Her face grew stricter. It clearly states, the signature is forged. She looked up at Remedios. Did you present this document to register title to the garage? The mother-in-law pressed her lips together and said nothing. Answer, did you register title to the garage on the basis of this contract? Yes, but. No buts. This is fraud. Milagros took out her phone. I'm obliged to report this to law enforcement. Remedios clutched her chest and groaned. Esperanza laid the rest of the documents on the table, the bank statement showing the illegal transfer of her money, the recording of Maximiliano's conversation with his mother discussing the scam, Penelope's statement about how they robbed her in the same way. The notary reviewed the materials, shaking her head. This is systematic criminal activity. I'm calling the police. She dialed, briefly explained the situation, and asked them to send a unit to the notary's office. Remedios collapsed into a chair. Son, what are we going to do? Maximiliano paced the office. Let's be reasonable. This is all a misunderstanding. We can explain everything. Explain it to the police, Esperanza said coolly. She sat on the sofa by the window, hands folded on her knees. A storm of emotions raged inside, but outwardly she remained absolutely calm. Maximiliano rushed over and grabbed her hand. Esperanza, let's forget all this. I'll return the garage, I'll return the money, I won't file for divorce. Let's stay together. Esperanza looked at him coldly. Too late. The documents are already with the police, the case has been opened, nothing can be undone. He recoiled. How could you? Easily. You planned to leave me and the children without a home. I defended my rights. Remedios jumped up, forgetting her bad heart. Ungrateful wretch. We pulled you out of the gutter, gave you everything, and you gave me lies and betrayal. Now you'll get what you deserve. 10 minutes later the police arrived. 2 uniformed officers listened to the notary's explanations and reviewed the documents. One of them turned to Maximiliano and Remedios. You need to come down to the station to give statements. We didn't do anything. The mother-in-law shouted. She's slandering us. We'll sort it out at the station. Please come with us. Maximiliano shot Esperanza a look full of hatred. You'll regret this. I'll destroy you, leave you with nothing. Esperanza looked at him with contempt. You have nothing with which to destroy me. The house was built with my money. I can prove it. The apartment is jointly owned. The garage was illegally transferred. The transaction will be annulled. And you and your mother will face criminal charges. The officers led Maximiliano and Remedios away. Esperanza remained in the office with Milagros. Thank you for your help. I was just doing my duty. The notary offered her hand. Stay strong. There's still a lot of work ahead. Esperanza shook her hand and left the office. She got into her car and started the engine. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline, not from fear, but from the realization that the first blow had been struck. She texted Immaculata, they've been taken to the police. The evidence was accepted. The reply came instantly, excellent. Get ready for the next stage. Maximiliano will surely hire a lawyer. Esperanza drove home. On the way she thought about the children. How could she explain that their father might go to prison? How could she help them through this nightmare? At home she gathered Soledad and Joaquin in the kitchen, sat across from them, and took their hands. Kids, we need to have a serious talk. What I'm about to say will be hard, but you need to know the truth. Dad and Grandma did bad things. They tried to steal our property, forged documents, and transferred money without my permission. I went to the police. They may be punished. Will Dad go to prison? Soledad whispered. I don't know. The court will decide. But he committed a crime and must answer for it. Joaquin jumped up, knocking over his chair. I hate him. I hate him. Esperanza stood and hugged her son. Don't hate, just understand who is who. Dad made a mistake. A big, terrible mistake. But hate will only destroy you from the inside. Soledad began to cry. Esperanza hugged both children, stroking their heads, soothing them. Inside, everything clenched with pain for them. They didn't deserve a father like this, didn't deserve this nightmare. That evening, an unfamiliar number called. Esperanza picked up the phone. Esperanza? This is Attorney Bartolome. I represent Maximiliano Salinas and Remedios Cruz. His voice was brazen, self-assured. I'm listening. My clients are prepared to settle the matter amicably. They'll return the garage, return the money, and you withdraw the police report. Do you agree? No. Don't answer too quickly. Think it over. Court battles will drag on for years. You'll spend a fortune on lawyers. Why do that to yourself? Because justice matters more than money and time. Bartolome chuckled. Justice? How romantic. Well then, see you in court. I don't lose cases. There's a first time for everything. She hung up. So, Maximiliano had hired a lawyer, clearly an expensive, experienced one, but it didn't change the situation. The evidence was airtight. Immaculata confirmed her concern. Bartolome is a well-known attorney, specializes in complex family cases, has won hopeless suits. It won't be easy. But we have evidence. Yes, and that's our main weapon. The key is not to let him derail the process, to keep the court from getting tangled in emotions and manipulation. Esperanza prepared, reread laws, studied case law, rehearsed her statement. Immaculata coached, corrected, and advised. 2 weeks passed. A summons arrived for a preliminary hearing on the division of property. The date was set for 10 days later. Esperanza took a day off from work and devoted it entirely to preparation. Immaculata ran a mock examination, asked provocative questions, tried to throw her off, tested her composure. You're doing well, steady. The main thing is not to get emotional. Bartolome will definitely try to knock you off balance. I'm ready. That evening Penelope called. Esperanza, I've prepared everything. My testimony, documents from my divorce, and contacts for 2 more women Maximiliano deceived. They've agreed to testify. Thank you, that will help a lot. I want them to answer for everything they've done, not just to you, but to the rest of us. Esperanza understood the feeling. Revenge? No, not revenge. Justice, long-awaited, hard-won justice. The night before the preliminary hearing, Esperanza barely slept. She lay staring at the ceiling, running through the next day in her mind, facing the opposing counsel, speaking, rebutting. In the morning she got up early, showered, put on a dark green tailored suit, hair in a neat bun, minimal makeup, just foundation and a neutral lipstick. She looked composed, professional. A stranger looked back at her from the mirror, hard, cool, determined. Not the gentle wife who had spent 14 years tolerating her husband's indifference and never asking questions. Mom, you look beautiful, Soledad said, peeking into the bedroom. Thank you, sweetheart. You're going to win. Esperanza turned to her daughter. I'll do everything in my power. Soledad hugged her. I believe in you. Those words gave her strength. Esperanza grabbed her bag, documents, and car keys. She checked once more that everything was there, extracts, expert reports, recordings, witness statements. All set. She left the house, got in the car, and started the engine. Court lay ahead, confrontation, and possibly dirty tricks from Maximiliano's lawyer. But she wasn't afraid. She was ready to fight to the end, because justice was worth any effort. The regional courthouse greeted her with cold marble and high ceilings. Esperanza climbed the steps slowly, feeling each one echo in her temples. Immaculata walked beside her with a case of documents, just behind them Penelope in a neat gray suit. The ex-wife looked tense but resolute. The third-floor corridor was already crowded. People stood in small groups, discussing their cases, nervously smoking by the windows. Esperanza spotted them immediately, Maximiliano in a charcoal, custom-tailored suit. Hair slicked back, a smug face. Next to him, Remedios in a beige dress with a lace collar, leaning on a cane, playing the frail old lady, though she usually darted through shops faster than the youngsters. A little off to the side stood a man of about 45 in an expensive dark suit, Attorney Bartolome. A cocky smirk played on his lips. He said something to Maximiliano, patting his shoulder, everything under control. Esperanza stopped by the courtroom door. Immaculata checked the witness list with the clerk. Penelope nervously twisted her bag strap. Maximiliano spotted his ex-wife and walked straight toward her. Remedios hobbled after him, carefully feigning weakness. "It's not too late to call this off," Maximiliano said quietly, stopping half a meter away. "Withdraw the police report. I won't ask for half the apartment. We'll part peacefully, without filth." Esperanza looked at him as if seeing straight through him. "You have no rights to my apartment. I bought it with my own money from the sale of my premarital property." "Prove it," her husband sneered. "I will." Remedios reached out, trying to grab Esperanza's wrist. "Daughter, let's keep it peaceful." Esperanza pulled back a step. "I'm not your daughter, and it won't be peaceful." The mother-in-law recoiled as if struck. Her face twisted with malice, then she quickly pulled on the mask of a suffering elderly lady. The courtroom door opened. The clerk announced the start of the session. People filed in. Esperanza entered with Immaculata and sat on the plaintiff's bench. Penelope took a seat behind them in the witness row. Maximiliano, his mother, and their attorney sat opposite. The courtroom was small, paneled in light wood. The coat of arms hung behind the high bench. It smelled of old paper and the nervous sweat of people awaiting judgment. The judge entered, a man of about 58, gray-haired, with a tired face and intelligent, attentive eyes. Sebastian Torres, the nameplate read. He sat, adjusted his glasses, and opened the case file. "The hearing in case number on the dissolution of marriage and division of property is now open. Parties, identify yourselves." Immaculata stood. Attorney Immaculata Villalba, representing the plaintiff, Esperanza Moreno. Bartolome rose, buttoned his jacket. Attorney Bartolome Quintana, representing the defendants, Maximiliano Salinas and Remedios Cruz. The judge nodded and made notes. "The court accepts for consideration the claim for divorce, division of community property, and compensation for moral damages. Plaintiff, state the substance of your claims." Immaculata opened her folder and began to lay out the position clearly and methodically. Divorce on the grounds of impossibility of further cohabitation. Division of assets, taking into account that part of the property was acquired with Esperanza's separate funds prior to marriage. Compensation for moral harm in connection with the defendant's fraudulent actions. Bartolome jumped up before she finished. "Your Honor, I ask you to interrupt counsel for the plaintiff. This is slander. My client Remedios is a respectable retiree, a lifelong teacher who raised her son and helps her grandchildren. The plaintiff is trying to defame her and her son with trumped-up accusations." His voice was loud and confident, clearly playing for effect, hoping the judge would feel sympathy for the elderly woman. Immaculata didn't bat an eye. "We have evidence of fraud and document forgery. We ask the court to admit it into the record." Bartolome snorted. "What evidence? Papers anyone can fake? Illegally obtained recordings? The court won't accept such nonsense." At that moment the door opened. 2 uniformed men walked in. Police. One held a folder of documents, the other scanned the room. "Apologies for the delay," the senior officer, a major around 40, addressed the judge. "Captain Ramirez, Economic Crimes Unit. We've brought materials from the criminal case opened against citizens Maximiliano Salinas and Remedios Cruz." The room froze. Maximiliano went suddenly pale. Remedios gripped her cane until her knuckles whitened. The judge frowned and took the documents from the captain. "Explain," the judge said. "Based on the complaint filed by citizen Esperanza Moreno, a criminal case has been opened under Article 159, Part 3 of the Criminal Code, large-scale fraud," the captain began formally. "The investigation has established that the accused systematically committed unlawful acts against family members and third parties." He opened the folder and pulled out several sheets. "At present, 4 instances of criminal activity have been identified. 3 victims have given detailed statements. I request that these materials be added to the civil case file." The judge reached out, took the documents, and began reading, his frown deepening with every page. Bartolome tried to object, but the judge stopped him with a gesture. "One moment. I need to review the materials." A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. Esperanza sat still, hands folded neatly on her lap. Inside she trembled from tension, but outwardly she remained perfectly calm. Maximiliano whispered furiously to his lawyer. Remedios dabbed her face with a handkerchief, pretending to cry. The judge finally set the papers aside. "Captain, please inform the court about the victims." Ramirez nodded and opened his notebook. Victim number 1, Claudia Espinaz, a distant relative of Remedios Cruz. In 2020, the accused Remedios persuaded her to transfer ownership of her summer house to Remedios' name, allegedly to simplify inheritance procedures after Claudia's passing. Once the documents were signed, Remedios refused to return the property, claiming it was now legally hers. Claudia was unable to challenge the transaction due to lack of funds for a lawyer. Maximiliano twitched, as if he wanted to say something, but his attorney grabbed his arm. Victim number 2, Salvador Ortega, a former neighbor of Remedios from her previous apartment. In 2019, the accused borrowed $3,000 from him under the pretext of an urgent medical operation. She never repaid the money. When Ortega attempted to file a lawsuit, Remedios threatened him with a countersuit for defamation. He backed down. Remedios jumped up, suddenly forgetting her cane and her supposed frailty. "It's all lies. They've conspired against me. They want to ruin me." The judge struck his gavel. "Defendant, sit down. One more outburst and you'll be removed from the courtroom." The mother-in-law collapsed back onto the bench. Her face was flushed, her breathing uneven. The captain continued. Victim number 3, Penelope Valdez, ex-wife of Maximiliano Salinas. In 2018, during their divorce, she lost all jointly acquired property. It has been established that 1 month before filing for divorce, Maximiliano illegally transferred an apartment, a car, and a country house to his mother's name. Penelope was unable to prove fraud at the time due to a lack of direct evidence. The judge removed his glasses and wiped them with a cloth. His face showed a mix of exhaustion and disgust. 3 independent victims, plus the current case, plus the handwriting analysis. He looked at Remedios and Maximiliano. This does not appear to be a conspiracy. Bartolome tried to regain control. "Your Honor, these testimonies are irrelevant to the present case. This is an attempt to discredit my clients before the court." On the contrary, Immaculata countered. "They are directly relevant. They demonstrate a pattern of systematic criminal behavior by the defendants." The judge nodded. "The court will take this information into consideration. Proceed. Counsel for the plaintiff, present your evidence." Immaculata opened her case and took out neatly organized folders. First, property documents for the apartment located at Bolivar Street, number 23, purchased by the plaintiff in 2007 using funds from the sale of her personal apartment, which she owned before her marriage to Maximiliano Salinas. Therefore, it does not constitute marital property. She handed the documents to the judge. Sebastian examined them, checking dates and amounts. Second, the handwriting expert's report. Immaculata placed a thick blue folder on the table. The expert concluded that the signature on the deed of gift for the garage does not belong to Esperanza Moreno. It is a forgery. The report details all characteristic discrepancies, letter slant, pressure, stroke amplitude, and individual writing features. The judge took the folder and began to read. Maximiliano leapt to his feet. "That analysis is fake. Esperanza could have bought off the expert." Immaculata smiled coldly. The analysis was conducted by Alberto Castellanos, a court-certified expert with 30 years of experience, accredited by the Ministry of Justice. His credentials are beyond doubt. "That recording is illegal. You can't use it," Maximiliano nearly shouted. Immaculata didn't raise her voice. The recording was made in the plaintiff's private residence, on her own property, in full compliance with the law. Everyone has the right to privacy, but that right does not extend to the planning of a crime. Moreover, one of the speakers is Esperanza herself, making the recording entirely lawful. The judge listened to the recording through headphones. His expression grew darker with each passing second. When Maximiliano's voice said, "I've already forged her signature on 3 documents," the judge grimaced. When the playback ended, Sebastian set the headphones down on the table. "The materials are admitted into evidence. The floor is yours, Ms. Moreno." Esperanza stood. Every gaze in the courtroom turned toward her. Maximiliano glared with hatred. Remedios pressed her lips into a thin line. Penelope, seated in the back row, gave her a small nod of support. Esperanza began to speak calmly, without emotion, just stating the facts. I married Maximiliano Salinas 14 years ago. I brought into the marriage an apartment purchased with my own money. 3 years later, I sold that apartment and used the proceeds to build a house outside the city. Maximiliano promised to contribute his share later, but he never did. I paid for everything myself. She paused, looking directly at the judge. 2 months ago, I accidentally found in my husband's briefcase a deed transferring our house to my mother-in-law's name. I began checking other documents and discovered that the garage had already been illegally re-registered to Remedios. My signature on the deed was forged. Without my knowledge, $7,500 were transferred from my bank account to my mother-in-law's. Her voice remained steady, but every word hit its mark. I set up a voice recorder at home and captured a conversation between Maximiliano and his mother. They discussed how to deceive me during the divorce, how to move all assets so I'd be left with nothing. It was a deliberate scheme they had already used on other women. Maximiliano jumped up, knocking over his chair. You lying bitch. The judge struck the gavel so hard the sound echoed through the courtroom. Defendant, one more word and you'll be removed from this courtroom, and the hearing will proceed in your absence. Maximiliano sat down, breathing heavily. Bartolome leaned toward him, whispering quickly in his ear, trying to calm him. Esperanza continued. I'm a lawyer by profession. I understand exactly what happened. Maximiliano and his mother systematically deceive women, leaving marriages with their property. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a well-practiced criminal scheme, and I demand justice. She sat down. Immaculata placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The judge wrote something in the record, then looked up. Any questions for the plaintiff? Bartolome stood, straightening his jacket. Yes. Esperanza, you claim that you personally paid for the construction of the house and all the property. Yet you worked as a lawyer in a trading company. Where did you get that kind of money? Esperanza didn't flinch. I sold my apartment from my first marriage for $60,000. That money was used to build the house. I still have all the payment receipts, contracts with contractors, and invoices. Everything was paid from my personal account. But you didn't work during the first years of your marriage, did you? I did, with a brief break for maternity leave. Then I returned to the company and was promoted. My salary was $1,000 a month, plus bonuses. Income statements have been submitted to the court. Bartolome realized he couldn't break through that wall and changed tactics. And what about your relationship with Maximiliano? You say he planned the divorce, but maybe it was you who lost interest in your husband and now you're looking for a reason to take all the property. Immaculata jumped to her feet. Objection. The attorney is attempting to manipulate the court. The judge nodded. Objection sustained. Counselor, stick to the facts. Bartolome sat down, clearly displeased. His psychological pressure tactic had failed. The judge checked his watch. Are there any other witnesses? Yes, Your Honor, said Immaculata, nodding toward Penelope. We call Penelope Valdez. Penelope rose, walked to the witness stand, and took the oath to tell the truth. Please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant, Maximiliano Salinas. Penelope sighed. We were married from 2014 to 2018. 4 years. We lived in an apartment we bought together, saved for a car, planned to have children. But about 6 months before the divorce, Maximiliano started to drift away. He became cold, irritable. I thought it was work stress. Her voice trembled slightly, but she held steady. Then one day he simply announced he wanted a divorce. No explanation, just said the feelings were gone. I agreed, thinking we'd divide our property fairly. But when it came time to settle, it turned out the apartment and the car were already gone, both transferred to Remedios' name. I tried to prove it was illegal, but I had no direct evidence. The court ruled in their favor. Did you suspect it was part of a larger scheme? Not then. I thought I was just unlucky, that Maximiliano was a scoundrel. But now I see it clearly, it was premeditated. They'd done it before. Bartolome tried to discredit her. You're bitter toward your ex-husband, aren't you? Maybe this is just revenge, slandering him in court? Penelope looked at him with contempt. I want justice. Not revenge, justice. Let him answer for what he did to me and to others. There were no further questions. Penelope returned to her seat. The judge flipped through the case files. The court has heard the parties and reviewed the evidence. The floor is given to the defendant, Maximiliano Salinas. Maximiliano stood. His face was pale, but he tried to keep his composure. Your Honor, my ex-wife is trying to portray me as a monster, but that's not true. I was only protecting my property. My business was unstable. Creditors could have come after us. I was trying to keep my family safe. By forging your wife's signature? Maximiliano hesitated. It was a misunderstanding. Maybe the expert made a mistake. An expert with 30 years of experience? The judge raised an eyebrow. Well, mistakes happen. And the recording where you tell your mother you've already forged her signature on 3 documents? Maximiliano stared at the floor, silent. The judge turned to Remedios. Defendant Remedios Cruz, do you have anything to say? The mother-in-law rose, leaning on her cane. Her voice trembled, pitiful and weak. Your Honor, I'm an old, sick woman. I only wanted to help my son. I didn't realize I was doing anything wrong. Esperanzada agreed to everything herself. Agreed? The judge opened the expert report. So that's your daughter-in-law's signature? Well, maybe I forgot. You forgot how you forged documents? Remedios had no answer, and then something snapped in her. She suddenly jumped up, forgetting her supposed frailty. The cane crashed to the floor with a loud clatter. Her face twisted with rage. Why is everyone so obsessed with that fool? She screamed, her voice echoing through the courtroom. She's nobody. She cooked, cleaned, had kids, that's all. Useless otherwise. I'll strip that idiot bare, down to her last penny. Then we'll go to the Maldives on her money. She burst into loud, hysterical laughter. Maximiliano froze for a second, then started laughing too, high-pitched, broken laughter, as if they'd already won, as if it were all just some kind of joke. The courtroom went dead silent. The court clerk typed furiously, recording every word. Captain Ramirez exchanged the look with his partner and shook his head. Penelope clenched her fists, restraining herself from shouting something. Judge Sebastian sat with his mouth slightly open, staring at Remedios and Maximiliano as though seeing them for the first time. Then, slowly, he took off his glasses, wiped them, and put them back on. His face showed a mix of shock and disgust. Esperanza sat perfectly still, calm, then looked at the judge and said quietly, Your Honor, I believe further comment is unnecessary. Sebastian seemed to snap out of his daze. He picked up the gavel but didn't strike it, just set it back down. His voice was cold. Defendant Remedios Cruz, do you realize what you've just said? The mother-in-law suddenly realized what she had done. She grabbed the back of the bench and tried to sit down. Her face turned from red to ashen gray. I didn't mean to say that. It was my nerves. Bartolome jumped up, waving his arms. Your Honor, my client was in a state of emotional distress. She wasn't in control of her words. I asked that the court disregard this outburst. The judge looked at him in such a way that the lawyer fell silent mid-sentence. That's enough. I've heard enough, and seen enough, and I've recorded it in the protocol. He stood. The court will take a 30-minute recess. After the break, the verdict will be announced. Sebastian left the courtroom. The clerk stood as well, gathered the papers, and followed him. The room erupted into noise. People whispered and murmured, pointing at Remedios and Maximiliano. Maximiliano sat with his head in his hands. Remedios clutched at her chest and groaned. This time, it seemed genuine. Bartolome spoke to them furiously, but they didn't respond. Esperanza stepped into the hallway. Her legs were shaking, but she didn't show it. She sat on a windowsill, staring out at the gray sky. Immaculata came over, sat beside her, and placed a hand on her shoulder. They buried themselves. Yes. You were incredible, solid as a rock. Esperanza didn't reply, just kept looking out the window. Penelope approached and sat on her other side. Thank you. I couldn't punish them back then, but you did. It's not over yet. It will be soon. The 30 minutes dragged on like an eternity. Esperanza drank water from the vending machine, checked the clock, counted the minutes. Her chest tightened with anticipation. Finally, the courtroom door opened. The clerk announced that the session would resume. Everyone returned to their seats. The judge entered, his expression stern, unreadable. He sat down, opened a folder, and took out a sheet of printed paper. In the name of the Republic, he began solemnly. Having reviewed the case materials, having heard the parties and witnesses, and examined the evidence, the court hereby rules as follows. The courtroom was completely silent. First, the marriage between Esperanza Moreno and Maximiliano Salinas is hereby dissolved. Maximiliano gripped the armrests of his seat. Second, the apartment located at Bolivar Street, Building 23, Apartment 48, is recognized as the personal property of Esperanza Moreno, as it was purchased with funds obtained prior to the marriage. The country house located in Salnegni Settlement is also recognized as the personal property of Esperanza Moreno, as its construction was fully financed from her personal funds. Remedios groaned, but the judge continued, unmoved. Third, the deed of gift transferring the garage and parking space to Remedios Cruz is declared null and void due to the forged signature of the grantor. Ownership of the garage is restored to Esperanza Moreno. The defendant, Maximiliano Salinas, is ordered to pay the plaintiff compensation for moral damages in the amount of $6,000. Maximiliano clutched his head in despair. The materials concerning document forgery, fraud, and illegal acquisition of property are to be referred to the investigative committee for the initiation of criminal proceedings against Maximiliano Salinas and Remedios Cruz. The judge set the papers aside, removed his glasses, and looked at the defendants. I must say, in 28 years on the bench, I've seen a lot, divorces, disputes, scandals, but I've never witnessed such cynicism and audacity. The statement about the Maldives was particularly striking. He paused. The way the plaintiff handled them left everyone speechless. Even me. Sebastian struck the gavel. Court is adjourned. Remedios suddenly slid off the bench and collapsed to the floor, unconscious. This time the faint was real. Maximiliano rushed to his mother, shaking her by the shoulders. Bartolome called for an ambulance. Esperanza stood, took her bag, and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. In the corridor, Immaculata hugged her. Penelope shook her hand. You did it. Yes, I did. They went downstairs and stepped outside. The sky was overcast, a fine rain beginning to fall. Esperanza lifted her face to the drizzle and closed her eyes. It was over. The court had spoken. Justice had prevailed, and yet, inside, there was no joy. Only exhaustion. Emptiness. 2 weeks later, Esperanza received a summons from the investigative committee. She went, gave a detailed statement, told everything from the beginning, the document she'd found in her husband's briefcase, the registry checks, the handwriting analysis, the recorded conversations. The investigator listened carefully, asked clarifying questions, and took notes. Thank you for your cooperation. The case is open. The investigation has begun. Maximiliano and Remedios were also summoned for questioning. Esperanza didn't know what they said, and she didn't care. It was no longer her concern. At home, the children each coped in their own way. Soledad withdrew, stopped talking to her classmates. Her grades dropped. Teachers complained about her lack of focus. Joaquin started acting out, got into a fight at school, talked back to a teacher. The principal called Esperanza in. Your son's behavior is aggressive. This is unacceptable. I understand. We're going through a difficult time, the divorce, the court cases, the children are struggling. Perhaps he needs to see a psychologist? We already have. Esperanza took the children to therapy twice a week, a calm, kind woman in her 50s who spoke with Soledad and Joaquin separately, then with Esperanza. The children are traumatized. Their father was a figure of authority, and now he's a criminal. That's a lot to process. They need time, patience, and your support. Esperanza also saw a psychologist herself. She wasn't ashamed. She knew she needed help. The therapist taught her how to manage stress, support her children, and avoid self-blame. You did everything right. You protected yourself and your children. Don't let guilt eat away at you. But the guilt was there nonetheless. Maybe she should have noticed sooner. Maybe she could have prevented it somehow. Penelope became a true friend. They met once a week, drank coffee, talked, sometimes sat in silence, and that, too, mattered. "How are you holding up?" Penelope asked once. "Barely, but holding." "You'll make it. You're strong." The neighbors gossiped. Esperanza heard the whispers behind her back, saw the sideways glances. Some pitied her, others judged. "She sent her husband to prison," said the woman from the third floor. "She's probably no saint herself." "Oh, come on," another replied. "He swindled her. She did the right thing. He deserved it." Esperanza paid no attention. The neighbors' opinions didn't concern her. Money was tight. The $6,000 in compensation that Maximiliano had been ordered to pay never arrived. His business had collapsed, and his funds had run out. The bailiff seized his share in the company, but it couldn't be sold. The partners had scattered. The contracts were terminated. Esperanza kept working, earning her own living. They lived more modestly now, no restaurants, no trips, no expensive purchases, but she didn't complain. What mattered was that they had a roof over their heads and money earned honestly. 6 months passed. A court date was set for the criminal case. Esperanza came and sat quietly among the public. She watched as Maximiliano and Remedios were brought in. He had lost weight, his face hollow. She looked 10 years older, her hair completely gray. The judge read the verdict slowly, listing every count of their crimes: forgery, fraud, and illegal acquisition of property. To find Maximiliano Salinas guilty and sentence him to 4 years in a general regime penal colony. Maximiliano sat motionless, staring at the floor. To find Remedios Cruz guilty and sentence her to 5 years in a general regime penal colony. The mother-in-law began to cry softly, without hysteria. Esperanza watched them without gloating, without triumph, just watching, thinking, this is how stories end, not beautifully, not victoriously, they just end. After the verdict was read, Maximiliano was being escorted out of the courtroom. He saw Esperanza and stopped. The guard tried to move him along, but Maximiliano broke free and shouted, "You'll regret this. I'll come back. You'll pay for this." Esperanza didn't answer. She turned and walked out of the courthouse. Life went on, slowly, painfully, but it went on. Soledad was gradually recovering. She started talking to her friends again, her grades improved. Joaquin stopped acting out, joined a wrestling club. The coach said the boy needed a way to channel his anger, and sports were the best outlet. Esperanza kept working. She got a promotion, senior attorney now. Her salary increased, and her finances stabilized. One evening, she received a message from her lawyer. Maximiliano had been released early on parole for good behavior. He was asking permission to see the children. Esperanza was sitting in her kitchen with a cup of coffee when she read the message. She stared at her phone for a long time, then called the children. "Do you want to see your father? He's been released and wants to meet." Soledad refused immediately. "No, I don't want to see him. Ever." Joaquin hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe. Just once." "All right, I'll arrange the meeting." They met in a cafe. Esperanza brought Joaquin and sat at a nearby table, giving father and son privacy, but staying close, just in case. Maximiliano looked terrible, thin, balding, his eyes dull. He tried to smile, but it came out strained. Joaquin sat tense, barely speaking. "Son, forgive me. I was wrong. My mother forced me, you understand? I didn't want to." The boy listened silently. "I'll make it right, I promise. I'll find a job. I'll start paying child support. We'll see each other again, right?" Joaquin looked at his father for a long moment. "I don't know, Dad. I don't know." The meeting ended quickly. Maximiliano tried to hug his son, but Joaquin stepped back. Their goodbye was dry, distant. In the car, Joaquin said nothing the whole way home. Only later, before bed, he finally spoke. "Mom, I don't believe him. He lied about Grandma making him do it. I don't believe him either. I don't want to see him again." "All right, sweetheart, we won't. Remedios remained in the penal colony. Her health deteriorated, and 8 months after sentencing, she was transferred to the prison hospital. She sent Esperanza a letter, asking forgiveness, begging her to visit. Esperanza tore it up without finishing it. The children didn't want to see their grandmother either. Soledad was firm. She tried to take our home away. Why would we need a grandmother like that? Esperanza didn't argue. Everyone had the right to their own choice. A year and a half had passed since that court session. Esperanza was sitting in her kitchen, drinking coffee. In front of her lay an old photo album. Her wedding, she was young, happy, Maximiliano smiling beside her. The birth of Soledad, a tiny bundle and a blanket. The birth of Joaquin, Maximiliano holding the boy in his arms, proud. Family holidays, trips, New Year's celebrations. Soledad came into the kitchen and saw the photos. "Mom, do you regret marrying Dad?" Esperanza closed the album. "No, I have you and Joaquin, the best thing that ever happened to me. But I regret not seeing who he really was sooner. Maybe all of this could have been avoided. It's not your fault. He lied. I know, but I still regret it." The daughter sat down beside her and took her hand. "Will you ever forgive him?" Esperanza thought for a moment. "I don't know. Forgiveness isn't an obligation. Sometimes it's enough just to let go and move on. Have you let go?" "I'm trying." Soledad hugged her mother. They sat in silence, listening to the wind outside the window. Esperanza had learned one thing in those 18 months: justice exists, but it doesn't come on its own. You have to fight for it. And sometimes that fight costs dearly: nerves, strength, health, broken family ties. She hadn't become a victim. She hadn't endured quietly. She hadn't accepted being deceived and robbed. She had acted coldly, rationally, mercilessly, and she had won. But victory wasn't as sweet as she had imagined. The children were fatherless. Her ex-husband was in prison. Her mother-in-law was in a prison hospital. The neighbors gossiped. Money was still uncertain. Life wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale with a happy ending, but it was honest. No more lies. No forged documents. No stolen money. Just an honest life, where you earn your own way, surrounded by people you can trust. And that was worth more than any paradise island. Esperanza finished her coffee, placed the cup in the sink, and glanced at the clock. It was time to pick up Joaquin from practice. She put on her jacket, grabbed her car keys, and stepped out into the cool autumn evening. The sky was heavy with clouds, but no rain yet. Far off, the city lights glowed. Life went on, not perfect, not cloudless, but hers. Honest, real, and that was enough.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.